Carl Jung would have described one of the most startling transformations he ever saw in human nature like this. Some people look gentle, fragile, and quiet for years. Then one day, something inside them clicks into place. In that moment, everything changes. When he opened the files that arrived at his clinic in Zurich, he kept seeing the same traces. People who had carried other people's burdens for years. Those who had swallowed a parent's alcoholic rage in childhood, who had blamed themselves for a partner's infidelity, who had mistaken the family's disorder for how things are. In every sentence they used to exist in the world, an apology was hidden. "I'm sorry. It's my fault. I'm probably exaggerating." You recognize these lines because maybe you once spoke exactly like this, because you were kind, because you felt too much, because you carried a little of everyone's pain. In Jung's early notes, these people look like victims, but a few pages later, the picture becomes something else entirely. What is happening is not simple frailty. Their minds work far more sharply than they think. They don't merely absorb pain. They read its pattern. They quietly log the tremor behind words, the millimeter twitch at the lip, the shadow in a glance. Who lies and when? With which word do they move into defense? Which silence is hiding something? Everything finds its place on an invisible map inside. In some sessions, Jung would bring colleagues into the room without telling the patients anything about them. No names, no history, no clues. Only body language, breath, the length of a gaze, the speed of speech. Within minutes, these sentences would surface. Exposed to long stretches of silence in childhood. Extremely controlling in emergencies. Really fear of loss. Bonds in relationships through guilt. These weren't fake intuitions. They didn't call it insight. They called it data. Their minds worked like analysts who had stayed quiet for years because they were misunderstood. So why say nothing for so long? Because society labeled their sharpness as oversensitivity. When they tried to say what they saw, people told them, "You're exaggerating. Don't take everything personally. Calm down. Don't be dramatic." The mind learned to deny itself. It sees, yet keeps silent. It feels, yet disowns. It shrinks its intuition, turns its logic down to a low setting, and imagines itself safe. In truth, the weight of what's real builds up inside. It builds and builds. Here is what Jung recorded with a kind of dread. These people did not merely tolerate mistreatment. They systematized it. They don't keep a victim diary. They build a strategy room. Who attacks and why? Where manipulation begins in the gaps? Which apology covers which offense? All of it dated, placed, and watched in silence. And all of this knowledge goes unused. Until that moment. The break is not a slow ascent as people assume. It's an event. Jung calls it the moment of clarity, a clarity event. The trigger is almost always the same, a breach of trust, betrayal, hidden debts, double accounts, bent realities. But the truly devastating part isn't the act itself. The destructive shock is the whisper rising from within. I have seen all this before. And in that instant, the mind that has been muted for years returns. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't narrow its eyes. It simply becomes clear. Most people imagine such a person will scream, cry, slam doors. No. In the scene Jung describes, the air freezes, and something unexpected happens. The empath calms down. The nervous system finds a new setting. Analytical intelligence and emotional intelligence lock onto the same frequency. And the person starts to speak. For years they have gathered data, and now they lay it out with the cool precision of a surgeon's scalpel. That day, at that time, you said this. Here your story changed. Here you made me doubt myself. This is not revenge. It is disclosure, transparency. The curtains of fog lifted one by one. Here, the field Jung calls the shadow comes into play. Because the dark side of these quiet people is not evil, it is long suppressed intelligence. The power to set a boundary. The habit of seeing and keeping silent. The shadow is not the wild monster you imagine. It is a naked force waiting for an ethical compass. They have silenced that force for years to protect others. At last, they open it to protect themselves. In Jung's language, this is integration. The scattered parts of the personality come together. Goodness ceases to be naivete. Compassion stops meaning self-erasure. Love joins hands with limits. From this point on, most manipulators find the person frightening because the old methods stop working. Coercion through guilt fails. Punishing with silence doesn't budge the door. Those who think, "I'll persuade them like before," are mistaken. Jung notes this state as the predator's sense. A predator knows which prey is no longer prey. It sees this not in a speech but in a look. The most dangerous person is not the one who wants to fight, but the one who no longer needs to. There is a crucial distinction here. This transformation does not produce ruthlessness. It produces accuracy. Not less love, but truer love. You measure who receives your kindness, who meets a boundary, and who is closed out entirely, because you are no longer denying your feelings. You are governing them. Insight is not paranoia. It is reading the data. Your calm is not indifference. It is a choice. Jung's observations stretch into practical outcomes. After the shift, relationships reconfigure quickly. The person quietly removes bad faith actors from their life. When the role of emotional trash bin ends in the family, the system shakes. Some structures collapse because they were held up for years by invisible labor. Others grow stronger because at last, everyone carries their own responsibility. This is not opening a war. It is recalibrating connections. What happens inside until that point? At first, the person recognizes what has been suppressed, not only their anger, but their intelligence, not only their fragility, but their intuition. They realize that what they belittled as "I'm too sensitive" is actually a superior capacity to process data. In the second phase, pieces interlock. The persona, our mask of compliance, loosens a little. The shadow appears without needing to prove its innocence. In the third phase, this unification becomes practice. Boundaries are felt without a speech. Words shorten, intentions clarify. No does not require an explanation. Yes is rarer and more real. If you've read this far, you likely saw yourself somewhere in it. The world teaches empaths to be the shock absorber of the system for a long time. You soften the jolts. You tolerate the repeats. You accept the apologies. But every shock absorber has a lifespan. One day, a new way of holding the road is needed. On that day, some will accuse you of changing. What actually happened is that you finally became the same. You returned to your core. Your mind and your heart shook hands. Let's ask it more plainly. What triggers that moment of clarity? In most cases, the wound deeper than betrayal is realizing you have betrayed yourself. You saw the signs and chose not to see. You gathered the data and silenced it. You erased yourself in the name of kindness. And one day, when the price of erasure is paid in full, you speak with your true voice. That voice is not loud. It is definite. Because at last you have placed your trust not only in the people outside, but in the person inside. What shook Jung was the permanence of this transformation. The person does not go back. They don't slide into their old role as the one who shows up for everyone. Because now they know, unlimited goodwill is wasted in minds of bad faith. And waste is not the language of love. Love requires accuracy. It requires knowing where and when. From this point on, empathy becomes selective. Selectivity is not arrogance, it is common sense. A dangerous possibility appears here. Jung also considers how this power can rot if it is not joined to an ethical frame. This capacity to read people can be used as manipulation if one chooses. That is why one leg of the transformation is always intention. Where intention stays in the light, power becomes healing. When intention darkens, the same power wounds. Integration therefore demands not only intelligence and courage, but responsibility. Maybe you're asking, where do I start? The answer is more concrete than you think. First step, validate what you feel without driving yourself crazy. This is how I feel, and that information has value. Second step, small boundaries, tiny. Delaying a text reply is already a signal. Third step, log the data, not to hoard proof, but to calibrate self-trust. Fourth step, redefine silence, not an escape, an adjustment, a return to what is happening, who you are, and what you want. You will still struggle while doing these things. Years of conditioning do not dissolve in a day. But as boundless yeses give way to measured noes, a new space opens inside. That space is not a cliff to fear. It is a valley to breathe in. There you will see that your fineness was never weakness. It is a craft. Compassion, when it is not exploited, is medicine. A boundary is not love's wall, it is love's gate. You decide who passes through. And perhaps most important, people will feel that you have changed before you ever say so. Some will drift away. Some will come closer. Those who leave may be the loudest. Those who approach may be the quietest and truest. Be ready. When you open a new space, the old crowd no longer fits. This is not loneliness. It is a companionship that passes through chosen solitude. There, you find your own voice. Before he closed his notebook, Jung would add a small line. An awakened empath does not proclaim their power. People feel that proclamation is unnecessary. That sentence captures the aesthetic of the transformation. No spectacle, no proof, no excess. Presence. And even the calmest form of presence can sometimes move a room. Let's pause here, because next we'll place the stages of this transformation into a more concrete frame. What unfolds naturally, what grows with practice, and what anchors with ethics. How the shadow becomes your ally, how the personality integrates, and how this new state spreads through your life. Just know this: if you have blamed yourself for feeling too much for years, perhaps the problem was never that you felt too much. It was that you did not take what you felt seriously. From here on, seriousness meets grace. In the next step, we'll sketch the skeleton of this grace. That silence is not a flight but a position. That a boundary is not a wall but a threshold. That empathy is not mere sacrifice but an act of architecture. And yes, when the time comes, something inside will click into place. Then everything will change. When you look at your phone in the morning, your reflex is different now. You used to shapeshift to match someone's mood and reply within seconds. Now the first line that crosses your mind is, "I see." Then the second, "And I don't have to answer immediately." That isn't indifference, it's reclaiming rhythm. Rush is the invisible accelerator of most games. Slowness is your neutral zone. The same picture appears when you walk into a meeting room at work. Some people talk fast, some try to dominate, some quietly seek approval. Your body loosens, your breath finds its pace. The inner analyst is already at work. Who is on defense? Who fears losing? Who wants to assert dominance? You offer one sentence, short and to the point. Let's discuss this tomorrow. The data is incomplete. The tension in the room shifts. Some get uneasy, some relax. The quiet confidence of a person who taps the brakes spreads. Clarity replaces noise. At home, the invisible role you have carried for years doesn't function the way it used to. Being the mediator, the conscience, the garbage collector falls from your face like a tired mask. In an argument, the eyes turn to you again. You decide. You used to absorb the shock. Now you take one step back and calmly say, "This is between you two. I'm at my boundary." The silence grows heavy, but the weight is not yours. The load stays where it belongs. In relationships, you now make a vital distinction by instinct. Being a good person is one thing. Appearing agreeable is another. A good person does not cut their bond with truth. Appearing agreeable often sacrifices truth. I understand you does not mean yes to everything. I love you does not mean I will deny myself. Love requires accuracy. Accuracy requires measure. And measure sometimes means stepping back. When a topic that has spun for years at the table comes up again, the same old lines take the stage. You're exaggerating. You're too sensitive. This is just who we are. The intelligence that has waited and been silenced for years speaks in a steady voice. This isn't exaggeration. It happened 3 times. I flagged it each time. Today I'm standing here. No doors slam. No names are recited. Only reality finds its place. That is where the unease comes from. For the first time, direction changes without volume. You realize you misunderstood the shadow. It is not something that darkens you. It is capacity you haven't used for years. Your ability to set limits. Your courage to point to what's true. When the shadow is seen, you do not become worse. You become whole. Instead of blinding yourself so as not to do harm, you say, "I decide the measure of my kindness." That is not contempt for others. It is refusal to betray yourself. A dangerous invitation can arrive alongside your new power. The skill of reading people can turn into a toy if you allow it. You can puncture a sentence in 2 seconds. You can spot a wound in 1 glance. A smug voice peeks through the window. If I wanted, I could destroy them. Right there, you breathe. I won't wield power, I'll wield precision. Even the sharpest sword does damage in an unethical hand. Your choice is guarded clarity, healing, lucidity, boundary. From the outside, someone might say you've grown cold. Inside, you are warm for the first time, because you stopped living split from yourself. The meaning of silence has changed. Not escape, position. The rhythm of speech has changed. Not a need for proof, but returning the truth to its place. The rooms in your mind are rearranging. The crowded hall called everyone's expectations is shrinking, while the windows of the room called my intention are opening. The reactions around you confirm it. Some people drift away. The ones who made the most noise, the most accustomed ones. The quiet ones hear you for the first time. Some say, "I miss how you used to be." In truth, they miss their old comfort. Some say, "You've changed." True, but not because you changed, because for the first time, you are whole. Now and then your mind rings the old guilt bell, as if a good person must run whenever called. Guilt is only the alarm of a system that has lost its favorite role. Don't assume there's a fire because an alarm is ringing. Sometimes what rings is just habit. Stop. Breathe. I am not doing something wrong. I am doing something new. Over time, the alarm goes quiet. The system is forced to adapt to the new setting. Picture those rooms in Zurich. When Jung invited the same people to the same chairs again, the room was no longer the same. Those used to manipulation grew restless without knowing why. It was as if an invisible light was revealing patterns. The buttons they had memorized no longer worked. Even your silence said, "You won't get through here anymore." This was not a threatening silence. It was the fading of a futile effort. Those who came in good faith exhaled as if a weight had been lifted from their bodies, because finally, things were clear. This clarity produces results more concrete than you expect. Life speeds up, but the noise drops. Your decisions are more accurate because you see patterns, not just people. Your relationships are sturdier because you let go of what was habit, not love. Family balances find their place. Everyone begins to carry responsibility for their own emotions. You shift from the person who holds everything to the person who holds what's right. There are small signs in daily moments. When a friend tries to pull you down as a joke, you smile and change the subject. If they try a third time, you quietly say, "I don't like this." You don't extend the explanation. You don't shame anyone. You simply make the boundary visible. Yes, sometimes that sentence shakes the relationship. What remains after the tremor is real. Your mind collected data for years. Now you match behavior to that data. Behavior seals conviction. Without the seal, the mind drifts back to old paths. That's why small rituals carry big patterns. Answering a message 2 hours later, on purpose. Deferring the conversation to the next day when the tone climbs. Saying, "Not right now." Simple acts that draw a new route for the nervous system. Your language about yourself changes too. "I'm very sensitive" becomes "I see very well," not "I overthink everything," but "I analyze well." This isn't arrogance, it is balance. The capacity you belittled for years takes its proper name. Names give direction. Direction simplifies life. When someone tries to pull you into an old game, the spotlight on the stage now turns elsewhere. Being right gives way to standing in the right place. Arguments die out before they become a case. Because the fuel of the argument, the wrong tempo, has been removed. This is not winning. It is putting the burden down. Some nights the old voices return. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm too rigid? You ask yourself. What was the truth? And you recall the 3 bare items in your small notebook. What happened? What I said? What I felt? No justifications, no excuses. 3 clear stones. Once the stones are set in place, the mind does not go dark again. It remembers the dawn. Some people around you are wary of you now. This is not fear. It is being seen. Those who were used to using you realize they no longer hold the key to the new door. Their instincts tell them the field has changed. That's why they stay away. The good ones come closer more quietly. They sense a safe climate. The space separates intentions. The most surprising part is how quickly this clarity becomes productivity. Decisions are faster, outcomes cleaner. The things you say yes to grow in number while draining you less, because you've closed the drains of wrong yeses. Your no's don't create guilt, they create space. As activity drops, essence rises. From the outside, it looks like distance. From the inside, it feels like closeness to yourself. In the middle of it all, a small but decisive truth becomes clear. Power is not noise. Power is a sentence placed well, sometimes a single sentence. I don't want this. I'll stand here. I'm ending this now. These sentences don't start wars. They create the conditions in which a war cannot be sustained. Yes, some relationships end. They needed to. Others are rebuilt. They needed that too. At the end, when you look back to the beginning, you notice for the first time, kindness was never weakness. Weakness was leaving your kindness undefended. Now your kindness has a guard. Its name is boundary. Beside the boundary stands a mind. Its name is accuracy. When the two stand together, love is not a concession, it is a choice. A choice has costs, yes, but it does not have a price. price is paid when you subtract yourself. And deep down, one day someone will ask again, what happened to you? The answer is simple. Nothing happened. I finally honored what I see. That sentence is not loud. It is definite. And definiteness changes the frame of a life. When the frame changes, the content finds its place on its own.